The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the program. Scott here, filling in for host Mark Reddick while he gets some much-deserved R&R. Lots to get to today, starting with us shining a light on FMCSA's Under-21 pilot program. To say that participation has been lackluster would be an understatement at this point. New data show that an underwhelming number of motor carriers have applied and even fewer have been accepted into the program. Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, drops by with analysis and also has an update on plans to rebuild Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. Then the Environmental Protection Agency's strict new heavy truck emission rule made waves within the industry, but it's also making headlines in the mainstream media. It's the same with autonomous trucks as well. OOIDA Director of Communications George O'Connor tells us how these issues are being perceived by the general public and what OOIDA is doing to make sure the voices of small business truckers are heard. And finally, OOIDA tour truck driver Marty Ellis muses over the eclipse, a nuclear verdict in Missouri, and a possible connection between automatic transmissions and parking lot speeding. All that and more coming up over the next hour. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. We're learning more about some of the declarations, exemptions, and waivers affecting the trucking industry as a result of the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. This week, FMCSA hosted an information session to recap these changes and answer questions for those impacted. Tom Liberatore is the U.S. Department of Transportation Director for the Office of Enforcement and Compliance. He started off the session talking about the two types of relief for truck drivers.
The maximum driving time for property carriers, broad relief under 395.3 if you're engaged in direct relief efforts with the Port of Baltimore. So if specifically the removal of debris from the Francis Scott Key site related to the wreckage that's being removed, and also vehicles that are transporting equipment to be used for those purposes. So if you were in that group, you're granted much broader relief from the hours of service requirements during the term of this extension. The second part is the 11-hour maximum driving time. You're able to use up to 2 additional hours of driving time if you were transporting or engaged in the transport of commodities diverted from the Port of Baltimore to another East Coast port, and also if you were engaged in the transportation of fuel from that Curtis Bay Marine Terminal in the counties that are listed within here. If you are not within that geographic region, related to the transportation of fuel, that all normal rules for hours of service, ELDs, everything else applies.
Liberatore also talked about the ELD exemption for those who do short-haul transportation.
So a lot of the short-haul intermodals that were involved, primarily with business engaged just within the Port of Baltimore and other property carriers that were engaged in those efforts, they are temporarily given relief by not having to require the installation of an ELD should they no longer be able to utilize the short haul exception. Understanding that some of the diverted freight and cargo may need to be retrieved from locations that are further away than typically accessed by these carriers. And in those instances, if you do not already have an ELD installed in your vehicle, you are not required, if you were operating under the terms of this extension, to have an ELD installed through May 8th. However, you are required to maintain paper logs. So you still need to document your hours of service. You can just utilize the paper logs. You do not have to go through the time and expense of having an ELD installed during the term of the extension.
Liberatore added that it's important to read through what those extensions allow to ensure you're still abiding by all the requirements. These extensions go until May 8th. For the latest, you can visit fmcsa.dot.gov. More support is coming in for the DRIVE Act, both in the House and Senate. This week, Representative Gary Palmer of Alabama joined the House bill that would stop speed limiters. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas and Senator Ted Budd of North Carolina became co-sponsors to the similar Senate bill. These additions bring the total number of co-sponsors to 41 in the House and 12 in the Senate. Both versions of the DRIVE Act would prohibit the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration from declaring any rule or regulation mandating speed limiters. In an effort to make transportation infrastructure more resilient to climate change, the Biden-Harris administration announced nearly $830 million in grants. The money will go to 80 projects nationwide that will help states and local communities save taxpayers money. The goal of this is to strengthen surface transportation systems and make them more resilient to extreme weather events worsened by the climate crisis, flooding, sea level rise, heat waves, and other disasters. This new program is aimed at supporting projects that will protect bridges, roads, ports, rail, and transit from the impacts of climate change. Kentucky's governor has vetoed a bill that would put autonomous vehicles on the road without human supervision. According to WDRB, for the second straight year, Governor Andy Beshear has vetoed the Republican-dominated legislature's attempt to allow for driverless cars in the state. The governor was quoted saying that House Bill 7 does not fully address questions about the safety and security of driverless cars, nor mandate a testing period in which a human would have to be inside the autonomous vehicle and ready to intervene if necessary. The governor echoed the same comments last year when he vetoed a previous version of this legislation. A trucking company in California could have to pay more than $208,000 for a fuel spill that happened back in 2022. The United States Environmental Protection Agency announced this week a proposed settlement with Shasta-Siskiyou Transport of Redding, California, to resolve claims of Clean Water Act violations. On January 21st of 2022, one of the company's trucks overturned and a fuel product spilled into storm drains in downtown Redding. The fuel reached the Sacramento River. The proposed settlement is subject to public notice and comment. Members of the public can comment on the proposed settlement on EPA's website. You have until May 10th to comment. A 42-year-old truck driver from Tennessee was shot and killed by a police officer in Michigan on Monday night. According to WSBT, the truck driver crashed into a St. Joseph Township officer's squad car after the officer tried to stop the driver. The trucker then left the scene and slammed into a nearby home before the driver fled on foot. State police say once the officer caught up to the suspect, they started fighting, which led to the truck driver getting shot. He was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Kroger employees in Tennessee got a scare this week after a truck driver intentionally drove into the store on Highway 51. According to WKRN, 45-year-old Clarence Carter of Nashville reportedly went into the store a little before midnight and created a disturbance. He then left, got into his semi-truck, and drove through the entrance of the store. First responders were called to the scene where Carter was trying to leave. He was taken to a hospital for a medical evaluation and eventually charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault, vandalism, and resisting arrest. All the employees that were inside the store at the time were not injured. And finally, a book that was supposed to be returned to a library in Colorado is now back on the shelf 105 years later. UPI reports that a copy of Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott was due to be returned on February 13th of 1919, but wasn't returned until recently. The library said the woman who returned it said her brother had found it among their mother's belongings in Kansas. The late fee for the book would be $760 under the 1919 rate of 2 cents per day, but the library eliminated late fees in 2020. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Coming up next, Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, stops by Studio A for an update. First on the Key Bridge collapse and then the adjustments being made to accommodate truck drivers. Then on FMCSA's Under 21 pilot program. We've got new numbers about how many motor carriers are participating in that program. And to say they're underwhelming would be an understatement. Jay's up next, but first, a quick break, so stick around. Landline Now continues in just a moment.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Welcome back to Landline Now. Time now for a roundup of all the regulatory talk that you may have missed this past week, from rebuilding the Key Bridge to underwhelming numbers from FMCSA's Under 21 Apprenticeship Pilot Program. Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, is here to break it all down for us. Jay, good to see you.
Good to be back.
Let's start with the ongoing situation there in Baltimore at the site of the Key Bridge collapse. FMCSA has been pretty active, and the DOT in general, pretty active about getting information out there. They held an information session online this week to answer questions and provide some more details that folks out there might need. And there's certainly a lot of help that's needed out there. What did we learn from that information session, Jay?
Yeah, the information session was mostly a recap of what the modified emergency declaration applies to and what those provisions are, and just kind of run through those real quick. This is an emergency declaration that is now in place at least through May the 8th, and it applies to a few different categories of carriers, and depending which category you fall into, you get a certain amount of relief. And kind of the broadest relief is going for any carriers related to the immediate restoration of essential services at the Port of Baltimore, really rebuilding the port, the reconstruction there, clearing out any debris due to the collapse of the Key Bridge. And that's pretty much a broad hours of service waiver that we typically see. Then we've got a couple of different categories here. Transportation of commodities rerouted due to the disruption to vessel traffic into the port. Really kind of a lot of hazmat traffic, a lot of oversized traffic is being rerouted around the Baltimore Beltway because the Francis Scott Key Bridge was really the only direct route kind of through the city. Hazmat oversized vehicles are prohibited from now using the tunnels through Baltimore, so they kind of have to go all the way around. Have seen some delays there. So you're going to have 2 hours of relief beyond the 11-hour driving time if you are hauling certain commodities, and that includes fuel, intermodal freight, including shipping containers and their contents, automobiles or other equipment transported in roll-on-roll of operations, such as heavy-duty machinery and farm equipment. So a little extra daily time to use there. And then some more narrow scope of assistance to fuel carriers in and around specified Baltimore metropolitan area there. So we've kind of got this exemption now in place, depending on what you're hauling, depending on how you're being affected. You have different sorts of relief. But FMCSA, I think, has done a pretty good job in kind of meeting with stakeholders, determining, who should receive the relief, how long it needs to be in place, and kind of keeping the communication channels open. So that's kind of where we stand in the emergency declaration right now. Certainly, FMCSA did note that if conditions change before May 8th, they have the ability to make further modifications. By all accounts, it seems like the emergency declaration most likely going to be in place past May 8th.
Yeah.
Certainly FMCSA, I think, will be ready to extend the declaration as necessary here over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before, but people in DOT have been talking with people in OOIDA and kind of getting their input. The reception from the agencies there, from the U.S. DOT, has been pretty positive. It seems like they've been receptive to at least listening to the concerns there. And there is, make no mistake about it, this is a mess. I mean, this is going to be a mess for quite a while, and it's going to take a whole bunch of help to get past this whole situation here. And as we look toward the coming months and the coming years as the rebuilding process takes shape, we are starting to get some conversations going about funding, what that looks like, and what the federal government's role is going to be in all of that. What are you hearing in terms of rebuilding the Key Bridge and what that's going to look like and what it's going to take?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's really been kind of an all-hands-on-deck approach, both federal, state, local level. And we did get, I think, $60 million in sort of an emergency funding that DOT has access to that's already been doled out. But based on what we've heard from Governor of Maryland, President Biden, who visited Baltimore last week, and certainly the elected officials from the Maryland area, it seems like there's going to need a whole lot more federal funding that needs to be unlocked. And when you look at some of the conversations that have really started back this week, now that Congress is back in session after a short recess, I think we're going to start to see more specifics about a legislative funding package. And Maryland Governor Wes Moore was on Capitol Hill, I think, on Tuesday, talking to members of Congress about the need for bipartisan action to help Baltimore. Every member of the Maryland congressional delegation, plus DOT Secretary Buttigieg, and certainly members of the Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, and the Office of Management and Budget have kind of united behind the governor in the early efforts. We've also heard from now Senator Ben Cardin talk to different senators and really stressing the importance that the cost share should fall directly on the federal government here, that this has to be a federal effort. It shouldn't fall on Maryland or other local governments to get the necessary funding out to where it needs to go. Haven't really heard any specific numbers yet, but might start getting some more details here in the next couple of days. And going to be interesting to see how this kind of process plays out. Are we going to have unified support across both aisles, both parties, both the House and the Senate? It's never quite as easy as it can be, as it should be. So it's going to kind of be see what that dollar amount is, if there's any pushback on granting that, if there's going to be any kind of provisions that need to be met to make sure that the recovery money gets approved. So that's going to be something to watch for here over the next couple weeks. I think for the most part, there does seem to be, wide support right now, but until we see that dollar figure, you never know how it's going to play out.
Certainly, and it is going to be a long process. It most likely is going to be a frustrating process for a lot of folks out there that are having to make adjustments to their daily plans, but we'll get through it eventually. This is going to take some time, and as you said, there are a lot of money. Let's shift over to FMCSA's Under 21 pilot program. Looks like the agency's having some trouble, Jay, getting enough carriers to apply here, much less participate in the program. The numbers are better than they were about a year ago, but not much better.
Yeah, and this is a program that we've certainly shared concerns with the Congress to FMCSA throughout the past few years, ever since it's kind of been discussed. And then we saw it approved by Congress in the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the big highway bill. And basically what it would do is set out a pilot program where drivers under 21 between ages 18 and 20, if they went through a pretty rigorous apprenticeship program where they got about 400 hours of supervision, that they could operate in interstate commerce. And the program itself was going to be designed to accommodate 1,000 motor carriers and 3,000 under 21 drivers throughout the 3-year period. And this formally got underway, I think, in July of 2022. But we've gotten updated data now since that the application period is open. FMCSA has only received applications from 113 total motor carriers. Only 34 of those carriers have been fully approved to participate in the program. FMCSA has rejected 38 different applications for not meeting all the different safety qualifications and specifications that were really vetted to make sure that this program can maintain and really analyze the safety performance of younger drivers. And then we've kind of got another 36 applications that have met the safety standards but have failed to complete different registration levels, which have now been removed due to some recent legislation that has passed. So still kind of certainly a slow trickle of participating carriers and participating drivers.
Very slow trickle, Jay.
Which, you know, for us, isn't that surprising when you look at all the different concerns that drivers have entering the industry right now. And it's kind of what we've told Congress, told FMCSA, told these larger carriers, that if you aren't fixing the long-standing driver retention concerns, you're not going to, get the drivers that you're saying are needed to meet this false myth of a driver shortage. So
yeah.
And we saw last year that there were like 4 carriers. There was a separate military program that was in place a few years ago that never really got sufficient participation. And it's kind of like if you don't fix the things that are going to make the industry better, you're not going to be able to recruit more people just because it's a new pool, it's a new labor pool. So the data that we've seen reported from FMCSA this week, I think, reiterates a lot of the concerns that we've said. I think it opens up some new questions on when this pilot project is completed. Is there going to be enough data on hand to really make an accurate assessment of do under 21 drivers perform safely? I think when you look at all the data, some more broad highway safety data, it's pretty clear younger drivers, more inexperienced drivers crash more. Certainly one of the objectives of this pilot program was determine if what the data would be for under 21 drivers engaging in interstate commerce and long-haul trucking.
Well, and that was my question, and you hit the nail on the head there, because I wonder, you're talking 34 carriers, right, so far approved. We're talking about a pilot program that's set to end in July of next year, so just a little over a year, really. Mm-hmm. 34 carriers at this point, is that enough to even have a determination that they're trying to make here? And it doesn't seem like it would be, considering their goal was to accommodate 1,000 motor carriers in all.
1,000 carriers, 3,000 drivers, and I'm not exactly sure on how many if these 34 carriers each have, 100.
Right.
I don't think that's the case. Do want to, find out a little bit more specifics. But yeah, again, and we hear all the time when FMCSA is, reviewing data, the OOIDA Foundation, I think, does a great job of really reminding some of these agencies, do you have a statistically significant amount of data to make long-term policy recommendations and policy changes? So that's certainly going to be something to watch for over the next year as this program continues. And certainly some of the larger carriers that have been supportive of this program did get some legislative changes to remove some requirements. Perhaps that'll help some of these 36 carriers that have been in limbo. But clearly, I don't think they're getting the participation that they envisioned when they pitched Congress on this idea.
I think that is a very safe statement there, Jay. We appreciate you coming by, as always, for these updates, important updates, and keeping us all abreast of what's going on out there. We thank you very much.
Sure thing.
That was Jay Grimes of OOIDA. We're heading fast toward a break, but don't go anywhere, because we've got lots more show to come right after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. With more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com. It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. George O'Connor joins me now. He is the Director of Communications for OOIDA. George, how's it going?
It's going all right. Keeping busy out here in Washington, but it's good to be here.
Wonderful. Now, these past few weeks have felt very busy in the trucking news world. We have a couple topics to discuss. The first is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which recently published a final rule setting the strictest truck emission standards at the federal level, requiring a quarter of sleeper cab tractors to be zero emissions, I'm doing air quotes there, by 2032. Talk to me about this and the attention it's garnered.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there with the air quotes, because the manufacturing process, the materials that would go into, battery electric technology that would power these vehicles, but they're not exactly zero emission. So it's more than anything, it's out of mind or out of sight, out of mind from an emissions perspective. So what the rule is 25% of semis sold in 2032 and thereafter would need to be zero, quote unquote, zero emissions. So the technology that would currently be able to comply with that would be, electric EV trucks, right? Or potentially hydrogen fuel cells. But that technology on the hydrogen fuel cell side of things doesn't seem to be where it would need to be in order to be scalable to comply with this mandate, really. So we're looking at 2032 for new trucks sold, which these things are not cheap. As anyone who has read any of the news reporting on this. So these EV trucks, these Teslas or others that are in the manufacturing space, I mean, these can be 3-4 times as much as a diesel truck. And look, on the performance side of things, the range, there are significant questions about the range, operation in cold weather, just to name a few.
Now, this was a highly anticipated rule that came out, and you're typically setting up OOIDA's Executive Vice President Louis Pugh to do interviews on topics like this one. How do you ensure that he's able to get out the association's concerns, which of course are the concerns of thousands and thousands of truck drivers, in, typically a relatively short amount of time? I mean, some of these interviews do run a few minutes, but some news stations, of course, the clip is 30, maybe 40 seconds. How do you ensure that?
Sure. So on this particular rule, we started hearing rumblings. So this rule actually was released the morning of Good Friday, which also happened to be, according to the Small Business Administration, Mom and Pop Small Business Appreciation Day. So the irony there is not lost on us. So they were trying to keep this quiet and releasing it on a Friday, the Friday news dump that some folks might be familiar with. And on top of that, it was, Good Friday. So we heard beforehand from some of our sources that there was going to be a press briefing the afternoon before this rule was to be announced on Friday morning. So we prepared our materials, got our statement ready, distributed it to a number of news outlets, and alerted some of our allies in Congress and other stakeholders in the industry that this was coming. And because of that, we were able to get the statement from Todd Spencer, OOIDA president, in a lot of these news outlets, including, but not limited to, the Associated Press and the New York Times. So those are large print outlets that are syndicated. So what the EPA and their allies would have really wanted is to just kind of have a free run on Friday morning of having their own voice out there, kind of shaping news coverage of this rule in a way that would be favorable to them. But by kind of forcing our voice into the conversation, we were able to provide a different take that, this is not all sunshine and rainbows, and the trucking industry actually does have some very serious concerns about this rule and how it affects our members and trucking as a whole. So that's on the print side of things, and then we were able to leverage that print coverage into some of these TV and radio interviews that Louis came in and was helpful with. So that included a Fox Business interview on Barney and Company that was a very effective interview to vocalize our concerns with this mandate. And that interview also ran on Fox News' The Five and some of the other Fox News shows. So we were able to utilize print as well as TV and radio to get the word out.
And you mentioned, this being released on Good Friday. I mean, to some people, maybe they wouldn't think twice about that. Obviously, there was a reason that was done. Many news outlets are bare bones on a weekend, let alone a long weekend. How often do you see that happen? These kind of big decisions, these big news stories come out on days like that.
Well, you generally if you see something popping on a Friday before a holiday, you kind of have to keep your eyes open, before Labor Day, before Memorial Day on Friday at about 5 p.m. because that's when some of the controversial rules or controversial things will be announced. The Friday news dump, because they don't necessarily want a ton of press coverage. They just want to get the policy out and hope that nobody calls them out on it. And on the Good Friday side of things, the Wall Street Journal was their editorial board. It wasn't lost on them either. So they wrote an editorial the next day saying, this is all by design. That they knew that EPA knew this was going to be controversial, unpopular with a significant part of the population, including truck drivers. So they just kind of tried to sneak this out there.
What are some of OOIDA's main concerns when it comes to this?
I mean, one of the big ones is the cost. And if you own a one or two or under 5 trucks or so, I mean, 96% of trucking is made up of small businesses. So, you're not being able to, buy these at scale to at least try to reduce the price. I mean, if you're talking about a 500,000 EV truck that you're forced to buy, I mean, you don't have the resources for it. I mean, and not only that, as I mentioned, some of the operational concerns, the range is not going to be, where it needs to be if you're over the road. Unless you're going to have to be charging this. Let's say you got a range of a couple hundred miles. I mean, to charge these things, which, by the way, the charging infrastructure is not there yet, not even close. These things need to charge 45 minutes with the highest level of charger. But by and large, if you're a owner operator that brings a truck home at night, I mean, you got to be charging this 8 to 10 hours. Who's paying for the charging? That's on you? I mean, these things are not cheap on the charging side. And one thing that Louis and Todd bring up frequently is, heck, we don't have enough truck parking to begin with. There's one safe and designated trucking spot for every 11 trucks on the road. So it's problematic as it is that we've got trucks that don't want to be there, but they are parking on ramps and off ramps on the side of highways overnight. So that's theoretically when these trucks would need to be charged overnight. I mean, this logic just does not add up of how the heck these things are going to be charged.
I want to shift gears now to AV trucks. Very hot topic any time of the year, it seems, but especially this week because of a report that was released. Talk to me about that.
Sure. So there are a couple of AV companies, AV trucking companies are operating down in Texas between Houston and Dallas. And up until now, they've been using a public roadway as kind of a test track, if you will. And they've had backup drivers in the cab, and what these same companies are telling investors and telling the rest of the world at this point, which they announced at CES earlier this year, the big tech conference, is that they're pulling the drivers out by the end of this calendar year. Which, when we're kind of looking at these things, we're saying, well, I mean, this technology, at least what's publicly available on the data, which isn't much, it really doesn't seem to be ready for prime time. So they really look to be under investor pressure to get this stuff out on the market before it's actually ready and safe for anyone else using these roadways. So the Washington Post did some reporting on this last week, and reached out to us because we've been pretty vocal about AV trucks from a safety perspective, and asked us what our concerns were, going into more detail about it, which we explained to the Post. And similar to the EV trajectory of media relations, print can lead to TV and radio as well. So after the Washington Post story published, we were seen as a voice on this topic. So the Washington, D.C. NPR station did a kind of a follow-up story and invited Louis to speak on behalf of small business truckers, and what our concerns were, and to go into more detail about what some of our concerns were. And it all comes back to safety. It really does, and that these companies are really pushing this technology before it's ready for prime time. And even in Texas, these road users are not signing up to be guinea pigs. So, and from a safety perspective, that really, really concerns us.
How important is it for OOIDA to be, of course, the voice behind the scenes, but also in front of the camera and, in print media?
Well, if your voice isn't part of the conversation, I mean, what we've been hearing over the last 5-10 years, or however long some of these AV companies have been talking about this technology being right around the corner. I mean, they've been saying it for years. It's right around the corner. It's right around the corner, and all these safety benefits, theoretical safety benefits that will improve road safety. Well, anyone that's been tracking this has seen that some of the four-wheelers, these robo-taxis that have been allowed to operate in a number of cities across the country, I think they're getting into accidents all the time. So one of the big points that we make is, if you can't get it right on a four-wheeler, why the heck is this stuff safe for an 80,000-pound semi-truck? It's a lot more complicated to operate. When you talk about different, if you're transporting liquid, fuel. I mean, this is not easy stuff to work with.
All right, George, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, sure thing.
That was George O'Connor, Director of Communications for OOIDA. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Get the most power performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. Marty's been all over the country in recent weeks. He just finished up a visit to Hillsboro, Texas, where he got to watch the eclipse with a couple hundred of his closest friends. And this week, he's in Arkansas, first at the TA in Prescott and next at the Petro in West Memphis. He'll tell us about his recent travels, along with his thoughts on eclipse fever, speeding in parking lots, and nuclear verdicts.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Mr. Ellis, how's life treating you?
I'm doing well. I really am starting to get back to normal, so everything's well.
We're all trying to get back to normal, I think, every day. That's my everyday right there. Where are you at right now?
At the TA in Prescott, Arkansas. I'll be here through the 13th. It's I-30, exit 44. It has a Subway and Taco Bell, 292 parking spots, and 11 showers.
Well, there you go. Sounds pretty good. I know you've been moving around quite a bit over the past several days, kind of going back and forth here and there. I'm wondering, the eclipse on Monday, seems like everybody has an opinion or maybe saw it. Did you get a chance to check it out for yourself?
Yeah, actually, I got to spend the eclipse time with one of our new life members, David Higgins. And so we were passing the glasses back and forth during the whole thing. And it was kind of a neat atmosphere here. The management here at, they're at the TA and where was I? Oh, Hillsboro,
in Texas. Yep.
Yeah, Gwen Ward, she came up with the idea of actually having some T-shirts made with, I saw the eclipse in Hillsboro, and then her and another of her management team were out grilling hot dogs during the whole event. So it was kind of festive. They actually dressed up in, one was in a mustard costume and one was in a hot dog costume. So I really like it when the managers are, number one, great to work with, and then have that attitude of let's just make this kind of fun for everybody that's around. And we had about, I don't know, I'm guessing in the hundreds, probably anywhere from 200 to 400 people in the parking lot. So not thousands, but
that's a lot.
It was pretty full.
Yeah. And you were
absolutely.
in the path of totality, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah. And it went really well. The clouds did us a favor and came and went. So we were able to see most of it.
Yeah. Sounds like an event. Sounds like they did it right. And obviously creating some memories there. Hey, a little inside baseball here for people out there. You typically send in a list of topics you might want to talk about with us each week. And one that you sent in to us had my mind kind of running here. You wrote a question, and I'm going to read it here. And it says, quote, "Do automatic transmissions encourage speeding through parking lots?" I'm going to imagine this came from a real-world scenario, something you saw out there, Marty. What brought this to your mind?
Yeah, I was talking to a member, and we were watching the trucks come and go at the time, and how fast the trucks actually come in or leave the parking lot. And it's kind of scary that both of us thought that one of the worst places to be is walking across a truck stop parking lot. And you wouldn't think that would be a very scary situation or, something that you could get hurt doing. But more and more, we're hearing about more accidents in the truck parking lot by people just getting run over. And part of it, I get, some of the time we don't pay attention to our surroundings and we have something in mind and we're going to go do it. But a lot of it is the speeding through the parking lots, whether it's speeding coming in or leaving. And while we both agreed that, they're chasing the clock, it's with the ELDs, it's by the second. You can be 1 second over your hours and you're in violation. So I understand the people's thought process on it, but that one, that little bit of time you're actually going to save, if you do have that, God forbid, accident, that you would end up spending a whole lot more time than you would have ever if you just slowed down a little bit in the parking lot. So, but we were talking back and forth and wondering, at least with a manual transmission, you had to actually shift gears. So you went up and down through the gears in the parking lot. And you would really notice yourself if you got into the high range before you left the parking lot. And so, but in an automatic, nowadays, you put it in drive and put your foot down on the throttle. And so we were wondering if that in itself could encourage people to do it, mentally encourage it, but you don't have that same thought process of actually shifting through all those gears.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think, you see this obviously every day as well, but it does seem like, just generally speaking, people are driving faster in places they shouldn't be driving fast. And that goes for, I think, everybody out there. But yeah, food for thought. It does make sense when you think about it and you put it that way, because it's, it's really kind of a thoughtless type of thing, right? You're not really thinking about it. Whereas with the manual transmission, as you mentioned there, you are thinking about it and you're actually doing something. But yeah, maybe there's something there. I don't know what we can do about it, though. Do we have any solutions?
Yeah. Not really, other than just people, really have to think about what they're doing and how fast they're going through the parking lot.
Yeah.
Some of the time, I wish I had a little speed gun so I could say, okay, you were only going 40 miles an hour in a place that you shouldn't be even going 10.
Yeah.
But,
slow down. I think that's good advice for everybody out there. Let's take a breath and try to enjoy our situations a little bit if we can. You also, I know something else on your radar here. We've got a nuclear verdict in Missouri that kind of fell across your radar. Just kind of talk about that and what happened and your reaction to it.
Yeah, it happened up on I-70. It went through to not only did the verdict come out, but then they went to an appellate court and they upheld that. But some of the things that caught my attention, number one was the $20 million. Some of these verdicts are really getting out of hand. And I'm glad that some of the states are really looking into capping some of that. But a person died, and, of course, every time somebody dies, we are very sorry for that happened. But we have to look at on all the totality of what went on. And one of the things was that the driver of the truck didn't take his truck off of cruise control in rainy weather. And whether that was a very smart thing on the driver's point or not, we can debate that. This person had driven this route for forever, so many times that, you kind of know it fairly well. But we all have to remember that things can happen, at all times. But the original accident, when the car ended up parked in the middle of the interstate, that had nothing to do with the truck. What had to happen is the truck came along. It was just past a curve, and the truck couldn't get stopped in time to miss the car. So some of the time I look at these and say, are the people that are on these juries, are they really looking at what happens in the split second? And we've all, done some things we probably could have done better. But are we pointing out to people that they shouldn't, it's just too many times that they are having a problem with this stuff happens every day and accidents do happen, but we have to point at somebody for the bad guy.
Yeah. We'll have to leave that one there, but clearly something that is on a lot of people's minds out there, Marty. Real quick here, where are you headed next? And give us some final words.
I'll be here through the 13th, and then the next stop will be the 15th through the 17th at the Petro in West Memphis, Arkansas. And just be kind to one another out there and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop every day on our show and on our website, landlinenow.com. And that's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care and drive safe.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.